Let's go! LSU football fans, we lost Le'Veon Moss. Oh my goodness, and he's also going to Alabama. Nick Saban steals another blue chip recruit from the great state of Louisiana. This is the end of the world, right? Not really. In fact, it can actually be a good thing for LSU. And I know on the surface it doesn't seem that way because he is a top 100 back, but I really do mean this. Even if Le'Veon Moss was a 5-star running back, we'll explain why this is a tricky situation for LSU in the first place. But the first thing you need to do is understand that this weekend at LSU, they had, in total, close to 1,000 campers when you factor in the linemen and the skill guys, and it's just wild. LSU getting all this in-person contact for the first time in over a year. And overall, when you factor in the in-state guys that camped well and out-of-state guys from the class of 2022, such as Jake Johnson, who's already committed, and Cam Dewberry, and obviously Kelvin Banks, who is a 5-star offensive tackle, a position LSU actually needs. We'll get to that in a second. It was overall a really good weekend, even though LSU got 0 commitments out of this weekend. But that also might actually be a good thing as well. So obviously the first thing is, yes, it does suck when you lose a player to not only another school, but to Alabama. We talk about this all the time. When you lose a recruit, you want them to not go to an SEC West or Florida school because obviously you play them every season. So if Moss went to Georgia, it wouldn't be as bad, or USC or whatever. But obviously it stinks. But the first thing is it's going to be tough for Le'Veon Moss to even see the field at Alabama, considering they're so stocked up in running back. In fact, they actually do have a 5-star running back commit already. So, yeah, look, I say this all the time. No one should tweet at Le'Veon Moss or destroy him for his decision. Some guys don't want to go to LSU. They want to go out of state. But yeah, I mean, a lot of different schools have really good facilities, and some guys want to go elsewhere. Even though LSU would be my dream school, it's not everybody's dream school. So what I'm about to say about Le'Veon Moss has more to do with the running back position than it has to do with him. And the thing you have to understand is positional value has changed over the past decade. But the first thing we need to do is discuss what positional value actually means. It's a term I kind of made up, but it's just a basic idea of how much your position matters to the modern game. And if you're Austin Thomas, and I'm looking at you right now, whoever's viewing this video, you, yes, you, okay? You're sitting on the couch watching this in SpongeBob pajamas, or you could be at work in your cubicle trying to hide from your boss that you're watching the coolest LSU channel of all time. Just think of yourself as Austin Thomas. You got a nice job at LSU, and your job as a general manager is to determine positional value. Who is and what are the type of guys that we want to bring into our program, and what positions do they need to play? And once you answer that question, it'll clear up which recruits are actually big-time recruits for LSU. So we'll get back to Le'Veon Moss and the future of LSU running backs in just a second. But once again, you're Austin Thomas, and you roll into this job, and this is your first weekend of over 1,000 campers basically coming on your campus. And it's wild considering that you're only going to take 50 of them in theory over the next couple of seasons. Now, I know there were some 2024 and 2025 guys that were camping, which is crazy, and a few of them got offers, but we're focusing mostly on 2022 and just a little bit of 2023. Let's just take a look at LSU's current roster right now, okay? Just what does the roster look like? Where are we strong, and where do we need to address needs? And the first thing is you need to look at which positions you are strong no matter what happens for the rest of the 2022 class. So, of course, LSU has 13 commitments, which in theory means they only have 12 slots left. Once again, we'll get to that in theory part in just a second. But if all of these commits decided to not sign and we weren't able to address anything in the 2022 class, what positions would we be fine with our current depth right now? And for me, I look at 4 positions where I think LSU is really deep. and running back is one of those positions, along with wide receiver, defensive end, and defensive tackle. Okay? Wide receiver is, to me, the deepest group on this team, and that doesn't include the 3 players they already have committed in the class of 2022, because obviously LSU, you got 2 more years of Kayshawn, you got 2 more years of Coy, you got 2 more years potentially of Jure, and then you got the 5 incoming guys and Trey Palmer and all these different names. So wide receiver is by far the deepest position on the team. And then you have running back, where at LSU you have 2 guys that are experienced that might go to the NFL after this season. Let's just say one of them stays between TDP and John Emery. Then you have 2 more guys in Armani Goodwin and Corey Kiner. I think both of them will be SEC level backs. So you're looking pretty good at running back, okay? And then at defensive end and defensive tackle, LSU is also really deep when you factor in Mason Smith, Landon Jackson, Savion Jones, Bryce Langston. Those are just the incoming guys. It doesn't include guys you already have like Jaqueline Roy, B.J. Ojolari, Phillip Webb, or whoever you want to mention. So LSU is really deep on the defensive line as well. Now, that doesn't mean you don't want to address these positions, okay? So there's guys like Quincy Wiggins and Walter Nolan and Jamon Tapp, Shamar Stewart, Shaz Preston, who are all blue chip guys that play these positions. So obviously, you know, there are some unbelievably game changer type of athletes you take no matter if you're loaded at the position or not. That's not what I'm saying. I'm more so just talking about the current depth on the team right now. So right now, running back is one of LSU's deeper positions. And what changed with running back over the past decade is the positional value. We'll get to that in a second, but I want to show you this really quickly. This is how I feel about the other position groups. I think LSU right now, the 2022 class, on top of the 4 positions you've already seen, the 2022 class has already addressed these 4 positions as well. Quarterback, obviously, with Walker Howard. You don't have to worry about that position until 2023. Then you have tight end with Jake Johnson. Corners, you have 3 corners committed. You got 2 more years of Eli Ricks, so you're looking pretty good there, as well as Dwight McGlothern. And then, of course, at safety, you have Jacoby Matthews committed. And then you brought in your best safety class ever. I would like to get another safety in this 2022 class, but still, these 4 positions have been addressed, and we're looking pretty good already for the class of 2022 at these 4 positions. Now, I want to show you the 2 positions I think LSU really needs to address in this class, and that is, of course, offensive line and linebacker. Linebacker could be a position that sneaks up on LSU. They really need to land a Harold Perkins or someone like that. I'm high on Jay Gilmore out of Javay Gilmore out of Amite. I really think he's good. I'll probably do a video on him pretty soon. And then you have, of course, offensive line. Okay, and you have Lucas Taylor, you have Bo Bordelon, and Will Campbell. Okay, and based on what we know, what we saw from camps, based on what, you know, the smartest people that cover the sport say, Will Campbell seems to be a pretty slam dunk hit, but we are still a long ways away. Remember, we mentioned Kelvin Banks and Cam Dewberry, and then Julian Armella just visited, and there are a lot of elite offensive linemen that you could sell immediate playing time to, because they can legit play immediately considering what the offensive line room looks right now. Considering also that LSU is going to be losing a ton of starters at that position, and the backups aren't where they need to be right now. So offensive line is by far the biggest position of need in this class. So we've touched on this on live streams and in recent videos, and obviously James Craig has been in the news. You know, a total revamping of a position where we are behind schedule. We've got to do better at this very critical position, and this is the only position where LSU lags behind all their other national rivals. They lag behind Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, whoever you want to mention. That we got to catch up. And we've had great offensive lines that didn't have elite Pro Bowl level players, okay? But we've just got to do better. Development, all of it. Recruiting, all of it. So I'm happy about Brad Davis, and we'll see what happens there. So let's bring in offensive line to running back. And it seems kind of weird, right, in theory. The guy who actually touches the ball, which is a running back on occasion, is not as valuable as a guy who never touches a ball, which is obviously an offensive lineman. Well, 4 of them. But it's true. And what we're going to do, before we get back into Le'Veon Moss and just talking about him specifically, I want to touch on a few different ideas, and obviously the comment section's open. Let me know if you disagree with any of the things I'm about to say. The first thing is you need more offensive linemen than you need running backs, no matter which team you're on, right? So obviously 5 offensive linemen are on the field at all time. They rarely, if ever, get substituted. And behind those 5 guys, you need to have at least 3 to 5 playable SEC West level offensive linemen. Whereas with running backs, I think we can all agree 2 or 3 is more than enough. So we need more offensive linemen than we do running backs, okay? And that's the same for other positions as well. You need to have a lot of defensive backs. You need to have, obviously, a lot of wide receivers. But this kind of leads into this next point. There is never more than one running back on the field at a time. There's no longer fullbacks or option offenses or any of those things. You're only going to have one running back on the field at all times, especially when you look at LSU's offense, where the 2019 group was mostly 11 personnel, and which is 1 running back, 1 tight end, and 3 wide receivers. Just numerically, you're only going to have 1. And if the 2019 offense is coming back to LSU, you don't really rotate that guy out all that much. I think we all remember Clyde Edwards-Helaire rarely, if ever, came out of the game. Also, the LSU offense in general, the 2018 offense led the SEC in carries per game at 43 carries per game. But then their offense got better in 2019, while at the same time seeing their carries per game go down. They went from 43 to about 34 carries per game. And then in 2020, it was around 36 carries per game. So not only has your positional value at running back sunk, the amount of times that they have to impact the game has gone down as well. And a running back's impact is directly correlated to the guys up front opening up holes in the running game. So yes, it is true that Clyde broke a lot of tackles, had a bunch of crazy cutbacks, and he made a lot of runs on his own in 2019. But it's also true that he had a better group of guys in front of him than John Emery and Ty Davis Price. And, also Clyde's ability to catch a football out of the backfield. He was just a really special running back. But not every running back is of a Clyde Edwards-Helaire ability. The thing is, in 2020, LSU obviously didn't have as good a running back play with John Emery and Ty Davis Price, but they also didn't have the holes to run through, and the film basically showed that every single game. So until LSU is opening up holes consistently year after year in the running game, it won't matter who the blue chip running back will be in the backfield. That's just universal. It doesn't matter what school you go to. That's how I feel. I think most fan bases watching that would agree with that. But then you factor in the state of Louisiana and LSU's current standing. And what's very interesting is Louisiana every season produces elite running backs. Okay, that has been the case for over 2 decades now. That necessarily has not been the case on the offensive line, where in recent seasons, Louisiana hasn't produced that many offensive linemen, and the ones that were rated highly haven't necessarily panned out either. So that's what makes offensive linemen, in particular in Louisiana, let's say a Will Campbell, that much more valuable because, look, Le'Veon Moss didn't commit, but we get into some current stuff here. LSU is after a few other elite running backs in the state of Louisiana, including Trevante Citizen, another Etienne, who I think is going to be really good. Whether he goes to LSU or Clemson, I don't know. And then you factor in 2023, where you have a guy by the name of Trey Holly who's super special, and then Reuben Owens is a 5-star back out of Texas. He's obviously very interested in LSU, and that doesn't include a few other deep-cut 2022 running backs like a Damari Alston. So there are plenty of running backs for LSU to get over the next 2 cycles for them to keep their streak of getting elite running backs to Baton Rouge to work. So the first reason why Le'Veon Moss going to Alabama might be good is that we want recruits at all times to do what they feel is best for them. You don't want a kid taking up a slot that really wants to be elsewhere. We want every recruit, once again, these are teenagers with hope and dreams, We don't want Louisiana guys going to LSU that don't want to be at LSU. Let them go where they want to go. I'm all for that. The second thing is, obviously, if Le'Veon Moss wanted to come, you are obviously going to take him, but that does open up a slot for someone else that plays a position of higher value. Take, for instance, a Fitzgerald West, a 3-star defensive tackle out of Lafayette who got an offer to play center at LSU. Look, if that guy can end up being Lloyd Cushenberry, that could be, someone of immense value, okay? And look, we all know how great Lloyd Cushenberry was at LSU. He was a big reason why LSU won a national championship in 2019. He was number 18 for a reason. Look, I would take a Fitzgerald West in this instance over a lot of 4- and 5-star running backs, simply because if he can fill that need, that is so important, because you look at LSU center depth for the future, it's a shrug emoji. So yeah, it could open up a slot to someone else that not only really wants to be at LSU, but could play another position that is of more importance. So yeah, keep in mind, slot value is so critical moving forward. Le'Veon Moss, now that he's committed to Alabama, at least we know he's probably going to go to Alabama, and we can move on and not have to worry about saving a slot for him just in case he wanted to commit at LSU. Now, if he decided that he wanted to come to LSU, I would seriously think about whether or not you should, take another running back, because, what do you tell the citizens and the ETNs of the world that really want to be there? And the 2023 crop is going to be really good. So I would seriously think about it. Slot value is very important, which is why I said the in theory thing earlier. I said, of the 1,000 of kids that went to the camps this weekend, LSU's only going to be able to take 50 of them. You look at recruits, well, you want to leave slots open as well for transfers. Because of the new transfer rules, it's going to be free agency pretty much every season, because kids are allowed to go from school to school freely now, and that is going to change the game. So the slot that would have been used on Le'Veon Moss could be an open slot next season to get the next Jabril Cox or the next Joe Burrow in the transfer portal. So it is a very fascinating thing, because you're going to get a more adult, mature player that can help you right away. And as many of you know, transfers have turned out to be very fruitful for LSU. So I want to message this to all LSU fans. You shouldn't panic. I've seen different messages saying, well, LSU football, we need to fix this right. Settle down, okay? It's not the end of the world. And I really do mean that this could actually be a good thing for LSU, because they have far bigger needs than running back. Now, if Will Campbell or someone of that stature who plays a huge position of need, like offensive line, decides to go to another SEC school where, LSU is obviously really shallow on the offensive line right now, that would be a time to panic. But Will Campbell is all locked in on LSU, and he loves Brad Davis, so we're looking pretty good on that front. But even then, this is just a good message because I've gotten a lot of comments and questions about Le'Veon Moss, and the news broke right before I did a live stream on a Sunday. By the way, we are back to our normal live stream schedule, Tuesday and Saturday this next week. And I really do mean this, one recruit does not change your program. Now, there are great players that play at certain programs, but once again, there's no such thing as an absolute must-get recruit. It just doesn't exist. And that's just a simple truth. So don't get overhyped or too high or too low. I mean, I get excited when a kid commits to LSU. I mean, come on, I'm a fan. But, in the grand scheme of things, don't let it sway your emotions too much, because, once again, these are 16 and 17-year-old kids that are, making these huge life-changing decisions at such a young age. So it's just a good message. So for the Alabama fans that are going to obviously troll my comments, you're sour grapes. Huh? I actually touched on this topic last week when Covontre Bradford decided to transfer, where I pondered the question, should LSU only take one running back in this next cycle? So I kind of felt this way before this news broke. So if you want to watch it, it's floating in your face right now. Of course, it's Hour LSU. Boom! Leftover pizza tonight. Let's go!